I bought that house with every penny I had left after the divorce. It wasn't fancy, not compared to the ones 2 blocks over, but it had character. Arched doorways, a narrow staircase that creaked when the wind changed, and those old Tudor-style beams I always dreamed of. It was the first place that was mine, really mine. After everything I'd survived, I wanted a place where I could exhale, a home where I could raise my daughter without walking on eggshells. So when I asked my parents to move in, it wasn't out of guilt. It was a decision rooted in love. They were getting older, and I thought, naively maybe, that sharing this home would give us all a second chance. Lark, my daughter, would grow up with her grandparents nearby, and maybe I'd get to rewrite whatever fractured us years ago. Maybe, just maybe, we'd be a family again. They came in with suitcases and praise, called the house a new beginning. But almost immediately, I felt something shift. It started small. My mom suggesting warmer tones for the living room, saying the neutrals I chose felt cold. My dad asking if he could take a look at the locks for our safety. And then the gardener, he used to ask me what to trim. One morning, I caught him taking orders from my mom about the front hedges. We want a cleaner look. HOA inspections are next week. I brushed it off. Maybe I was reading too much into it. Until the community bulletin came out. New resident welcome list. There it was. The Godwin residence. Not my name, not Kincaid, just theirs. Then came the sign. A wooden plaque on the kitchen counter. Nana's Kitchen, where memories are made. She must have ordered it online. I hadn't seen it the day before. I stood there for a while, staring at it, my hand resting on the back of the chair, like I was waiting for someone to walk in and explain it all away. But no one did. Later that afternoon, I was in the driveway pulling groceries from the back seat when a neighbor, Sheila, walked by with her dog. She smiled wide, like we were old friends. "So excited for the party Saturday. Champagne at the Godwin place. It's all anyone's talking about." I blinked. "Party?" She chuckled. "Oh, you. Always pretending you're out of the loop. It's on the invite. Your folks sure know how to host." After she left, I went inside, heart pounding, and scanned the fridge. There it was, a shiny, thick cardstock invitation with embossed gold letters. "You're invited to a grand champagne social hosted at the Godwin residence this Saturday, 6 p.m. cocktail attire." Not one mention of me. Not the name on the mortgage. Not the woman who cooked in that kitchen every night. Not the mother raising a child under that roof. Just them. I held the card between my fingers like it might burn. It didn't. But something inside me did. It's one thing to be left out. It's another to be written out entirely. That night, I tried to bring it up. We were all at the dinner table, Lark with her elbows on the placemat, chewing carefully, like she could sense the tension, even if she didn't have words for it yet. I asked, gently, "There's a party this weekend?" My mom barely looked up. "Just a small get-together. You've been so busy with work, honey. We didn't want to bother you." My dad nodded, eyes still on his plate. "Nothing fancy. Just some friends." Friends. People I didn't know. People invited into my home under my nose, with my fridge stocked and my name erased. I looked at Lark. She was watching me, fork still in her hand. I didn't say anything more. I just nodded. "It's just a party," I whispered later to myself, folding laundry. "It's just a party." But it wasn't. It was the first time I let them cross a line without pushing back. Later that evening, after dinner, Lark came into my room, holding something behind her back. "I made this," she said, her voice small, "for our fridge, like the one Nana has." She held up a crayon drawing of the house. At the top, in big pink letters, "Our home, me and Mommy." No one else was in the picture. I smiled, kissed her forehead, and taped it to the inside of my closet. Somewhere only I could see. The morning of the party, I told myself to just keep things smooth, for Lark's sake, for peace. The house was unusually cold. Not cold in temperature, not yet, but in the way air settles when something's off. Like the walls were bracing for something I didn't know yet. I put together a few snacks for Lark, made sure her favorite blanket was in the living room, and reminded her, twice, to stay close to me once the guests arrived. My mother was already in the backyard by then, giving orders like she'd been hired by a wedding planner. Staff I didn't know carried trays into my kitchen. Someone was adjusting the lighting in the foyer. I stood there, in my own house, like an intern watching someone else present my pitch. "They're just excited," I whispered to myself. "It's pride, that's all." But it wasn't pride, it was ownership. By late afternoon, guests began arriving. Not people I knew. A few I recognized from church Christmas photos my mom used to show off. But most were strangers. Shiny shoes, loud voices, and the kind of small talk that fills up space, but not time. Lark had disappeared somewhere after the first 20 minutes. I had seen her slip around the corner when the music started playing through the hallway speakers, probably in search of quiet. I figured she was upstairs, maybe drawing, maybe reading with her plush tiger tucked under her arm. Half an hour passed. I looked around the foyer, then the kitchen, then out back. No sign of her. I stopped one of the servers, an older woman with tight curls and a southern accent that wasn't hers, clearly adopted for effect. "Excuse me, have you seen my daughter? She's 7. Brown hair, pink dress?" She hesitated, then said with a shrug, "Oh, Mrs. Godwin said she was being a bit much, so she had her cool off in the back shed. She's fine." My skin went tight, like something pulled back against my spine. I didn't say thank you. I didn't say anything. I walked past the bar, past the smiling guests, past my mother laughing with a man wearing a sports coat I'd only seen in catalogs. I opened the back door. The cold hit me like a second wind. Fall in Tennessee can be deceptive. Bright skies, then bone-deep chill. I hurried down the steps, crossed the patio, and opened the shed door. Lark was curled up in the corner, her coat barely on, knees pulled to her chest, lips tinged gray-blue. Her eyes were wide but dry. "Hey," I whispered, kneeling down, already wrapping her in my own jacket. "I've got you." She didn't speak. She just leaned into me, and I could feel her shivering crawl up into my bones. There was no light inside, no heater, no reason. I carried her back into the house. No one noticed. Not one person turned their head. Not a glance. Not a pause in the laughter. I walked past trays of champagne and clinking glasses, and people complimenting the floral arrangements. In the kitchen, I stood across from my mother. "You left her in the shed," I said, voice flat but barely controlled. "In the cold. Alone." She looked at me like I'd asked if she wanted sugar in her tea. "She was being disruptive," she replied. "Honestly, you should be teaching her how to behave, especially with important guests here." My father stood next to her, sipping wine. He didn't say a word, just watched me like I was being emotional again. I scanned the room. No one flinched. No one blinked. And I realized they didn't see me as her mother. I was just someone who lived in the house. I took Lark upstairs, undressed her, ran warm water over her hands, put her into a fresh pair of pajamas, and wrapped her in the softest blanket I had, her small body pressed against mine on the bed as I held her close. And I just sat there. There were no tears. Not then. Just a stillness so loud it shook something loose inside me. This wasn't disrespect. This was removal. Erasure. I wasn't their daughter anymore. I was just the inconvenience standing between them and their performance. A voice inside me, one I hadn't heard in years, finally whispered the word. War. The house was still. The kind of stillness that doesn't feel like peace, but like absence. Lark was asleep beside me, small hands curled near her face. I had the comforter pulled over both of us, and yet, I was cold. The heating was on. I could hear the soft hum through the vents, but something in the air had changed. Not temperature, just tone. I lay there with my eyes open, staring at the ceiling fan that wasn't moving. I couldn't sleep. Couldn't stop thinking. Not about the party. Not even about my mother's words. It was something deeper. Quieter. I reached over to the drawer in the nightstand, searching maybe for a distraction. Instead, my fingers brushed a photo. It was old, faded, bent at the corners. Me, 8 years old, standing outside a gas station. My arms were crossed, my face, tight. Behind me, the car door, locked. I was on the outside. I remembered the day instantly. Summer in Tennessee wasn't kind. That day had been especially brutal. I'd fallen asleep in the back seat while my parents went inside the store. I woke up sweating, dizzy. The windows were cracked, but barely. I had banged on the glass with my fists, screamed until my throat burned. When they finally came back out, my dad chuckled, said I needed to toughen up. My mom told me not to be dramatic. They drove off with the windows still up. I don't remember what they bought, but I remember what I lost. The idea that someone would come back for me because I mattered. I held the photo now like it was evidence. And suddenly, I saw it clear. How that girl in the car became the woman in this house, still locked out, in a different way. Later that night, I checked on Lark. She was breathing steady. Her cheeks finally had color again. I kissed her forehead and turned to leave, but then I saw the paper. It was resting on her nightstand, next to her plush tiger, a drawing, crayon lines, pink and blue. Our house. The big tree in the front yard. 2 stick figures. Me and her. No Nana. No Grandpa. Just us. I picked it up and sat on the edge of her bed. When she stirred, I whispered, "Sweetheart, where are Nana and Grandpa?" She didn't open her eyes, just mumbled, "They don't live here." Not really. That hit harder than anything my mother had said. Not because it was mean, but because it was true. Lark saw the truth I was too tired to admit. This wasn't their home, and maybe it wasn't mine anymore either. I stepped out into the hallway and walked slowly through each room. The photos on the wall were all curated, portraits of Leland and his kids, framed black and white candids of my parents' anniversary party, a staged photo of Velma in the kitchen, smiling beside a roast she didn't cook. None of me, none of Lark. The bookshelf in the living room had changed too. My childhood books were gone, replaced by porcelain figurines labeled Godwin Legacy. I opened a cabinet, empty. My home had been repainted in someone else's story, and the more I looked, the more I realized I had let it happen. I remembered a quote I once read and never forgot, though I never thought it'd apply to me. There's no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. It was Maya Angelou, and she was right. I had swallowed my story for decades, folded my pain into politeness, until I couldn't taste anything but regret. I went back downstairs. The house creaked under my steps, not like before, when it felt like a whisper. This time, it groaned like it was tired of pretending too. I didn't speak, didn't cry. I went to the storage closet, pulled out a box, and started packing. Not to leave, but to reclaim. The day after the party, the house didn't feel like it had just hosted an event. It felt like it had hosted an exorcism. The only thing left was the scent, perfume too expensive to belong to anyone in this family, and a kind of emptiness that clung to the curtains and the chair backs like smoke. I walked into the kitchen and found a napkin on the counter. Not one of mine. It was printed, thick, ivory white with gold script. Cheers to legacy. Legacy. I stared at it longer than I should have. The kind of staring that isn't about looking at something, but looking through it. Trying to figure out if the thing in front of you is what it says it is. I heard laughter from the front porch. My parents, drinking coffee with the neighbor across the street, trading compliments about how elegant the whole thing turned out, about how well the Godwins hosted. They didn't mention my name, they didn't mention Lark. It was like none of it had happened. Like Lark hadn't been left freezing in a shed while they toasted their image. Was I supposed to just forget? Was that how we did things now? The thing about this family is, we don't yell, we don't scream, we don't confront, we smile, we erase with good manners. It was almost noon when I finally sat down with my phone, too tired to scroll, but too unsettled to sleep. And then I saw it. A video, uploaded by someone I didn't recognize but whose name I vaguely remembered from a charity drive years ago. Velma's speech was so beautiful. Real Southern class. I clicked play. There she was, standing at the makeshift podium in the backyard, the same one I built last summer for Lark's birthday puppet show. Velma was radiant, as always, confident, controlled. Our family has always been guided by values, she said. This home, it's not just wood and brick, it's our legacy, built from years of sacrifice and grace. She thanked my father. Then Leland, the son who carried forward our family's strength. She ended with, "This home reflects the values we raised our children with." The crowd clapped. My mother beamed. I wasn't mentioned. Not once. No acknowledgement, no name, not even a glance in my direction in the footage. The comments were full of praise. "You're such a light, Velma. True Southern elegance. Your home is a dream." I watched it again, this time without the sound. Still hurt. Maybe worse. I clicked over to her profile. There she was, posing in front of my hydrangeas with her wine glass. Captioned, "Building the next generation of Godwins, one elegant night at a time." In the background, barely visible, was Lark, blurred, mid-step, holding a plate. No tag, no name. She was a ghost in the frame. Someone commented, "I hope my daughter-in-law learns from you." Another, "Godwin women are just built different." Yeah, built to pretend, built to polish over anything that didn't fit the story. Sean, I set my phone down, took a deep breath, called Leland, voicemail. Of course, I didn't bother leaving a message. Downstairs, I heard the sound of boxes being closed and taped. My father, methodical as always, labeling bins, decor, winter, party supplies, next year. I walked into the guest room and sat down on the bed. My bookshelf, gone. In its place, a porcelain sculpture of a family tree. It had no names, just branches. I wasn't just being forgotten. I was being replaced. I got up, went back upstairs, opened my closet, took out a push pin, grabbed the printout of Velma's speech someone had tagged me in, and pinned it to the inside of the door. Then I wrote a note, just 5 words. "This is how they told me I never belonged." Monday came quiet and heavy. The kind of quiet that made your ears ring. I woke up early, or maybe I never really slept, and tried to ease into something normal. School drop-off, dishes, laundry, but nothing fit. The house felt like it was holding its breath. Or maybe I was. I went to grab Lark's jacket from the hallway closet before school and paused. Something felt off. The coat wasn't there. Neither were a few other things I had kept in that closet. An old photo of Lark and me at the park, the umbrella from our last beach trip. Gone. I scanned the top shelf. There used to be a frame tucked between the winter scarves. My college graduation photo. I knew that photo. I'd kept it there not for show, but as a quiet reminder. Of grit. Of earning something no one helped me with. It wasn't there anymore. From the kitchen, I heard my dad's voice. Calm. Collected. "Yeah, I think we'll do a wine night next. Maybe something a little more intimate. Real neighbors only. Real neighbors." I shut the closet door without taking anything. The air was cold. Not from the vent. Just cold. I walked past the dining room on my way back and noticed something sticking out of the trash bin. Just under the top layer of paper towels and 2 spent wine corks, I caught the edge of color. Crayon. I pulled it out slowly. It was the drawing Lark gave my mother at the end of the party, the one with the house, the one she'd drawn with such care, our names at the top in shaky print. "This is our happy house, just me and her, no Nana, no Grandpa." I stood at the sink and smoothed it out on my leg. The folds cracked down the lines of her handwriting. I stared at it, not because I was shocked, but because I wasn't, and that was worse. I didn't say anything, didn't walk into the living room and ask, "Why would you throw this out?" Because I knew the answer. She didn't want it, and I was starting to realize she didn't want us. Not in any real way. I folded the drawing carefully and slid it into the drawer next to the fridge. I'd keep it, just not for her. Later that afternoon, I called Leland, not because I thought he'd help, but because I wanted, stupidly, to believe there was still someone left in this family who might say, "That's not okay." He picked up on the 3rd ring. I told him what happened. I didn't embellish. I kept my voice calm. Told him about Lark in the shed, about the drawing, about everything, and he just sighed. "You always read too much into things, Dee." I waited. "Mom means well," he added. "She's just particular." I hung up before he finished that sentence. The silence that followed wasn't new. But this time, it didn't feel passive. It felt like betrayal. After dinner, after Lark was asleep, I wandered into the guest room, the room I had originally designed for my parents when they moved in. Soft yellow curtains, the antique nightstand I refinished by hand, the bookshelf with titles chosen for comfort. There was something new on the door. A brass plate. The Godwin Suite. I stared at it for a long time. It wasn't just a nameplate, it was a declaration. Inside, the closet was full, not with clothes, but with boxes. Labels printed and affixed. Legacy archives, family history, china, wedding gift. I opened one. Letters, old cards, ceramic pieces wrapped in yellowed newspaper. I opened the binder marked Family History. Page after page. Leland's birth, his achievements, photos of my parents' early marriage, family tree diagrams. My name wasn't in there, not once, not even a line where I might have been. I closed the binder, closed the box. If you're not in the history, I whispered to the room, were you ever really part of the family? That night, I tucked Lark into bed. She rolled toward me, eyes heavy, and asked, do we have to stay here forever? I brushed hair from her forehead. No, I said. We don't have to do anything we don't want to. She smiled, the kind of smile kids give when they don't fully understand, but believe you anyway. I walked back down the hall, sat in the living room. The air was heavy again, and for the first time, I let the thought land fully, without brushing it away. Maybe they were never really mine to begin with. I went to the kitchen, opened the drawer, pulled out the crumpled drawing, and slid it into a manila folder. I labeled it, to remember. Wednesday started like most middle-of-the-week days. Lark off to school with her lunch packed, the house still, my parents already outside discussing mulch with a landscaper they hired without asking. I was halfway through making coffee when the email hit. Fraud alert. Unusual activity. Shared account flagged. I hadn't touched that account in over a week. It was the one I used solely for house-related expenses. Nothing personal, just groceries, utilities, maintenance. I clicked in. My heart thumped once, hard, when I saw the amounts. $2,000 for event coordination. $1,200 for hospitality rentals. $500 for valet service. All dated 3 days before the party. All approved. One entry had a cosigner authorization next to it, Carvel Godwin. No one asked, no heads up, no conversation, just took. They weren't stealing money, they were stealing my ability to say no. I closed the laptop, hand tight on the trackpad. I stood there, staring at the tile backsplash like it owed me an apology. And the only thing I could think was, this is exactly how they do it. Polite, quiet, permanent. It was around noon when I heard them talking. Velma and Carvel, dining room, their voices low but not quiet enough. She's still not settled, my mother said. She's a lot of energy, my dad added. Well, maybe it's time. Have you thought about having her stay with her mother for a while? It might be best for her, for all of us. I walked in mid-sentence. They didn't even flinch, just looked up like I was interrupting a strategy meeting. I didn't say anything at first, just stood there, letting the moment sit. Then I asked, flat, you're talking about my child? Velma tilted her head. It's just a thought. This house, the energy, it's delicate. It needs balance. You know how sensitive guests can be. Like she was talking about decor, a vase, a rug that didn't match. I nodded once. Let the silence stretch. Then I spoke. This is my daughter's home. She will not be moved, and neither will I. Velma's mouth opened, that smile creeping in again. Now let's not get dramatic. This, I said, louder now, is the only time I'm going to say this nicely. Carvel looked down at his plate. Velma stirred her tea. The air got heavier. I left them there, still sitting like nothing had shifted. Back in my office, I opened my filing cabinet, bank statements, house deed, payment logs. I'd documented everything when I bought the place. All 70% of that down payment, mine. All the utilities, mine. All the silence, mine too. I pulled out a contract template I'd written for a family friend once. It dealt with tenant rights, co-residency, eviction timelines. I stared at it for a long time. I'd never imagined I'd have to use it against the people who raised me. A phrase from an old client floated up. Sometimes the people closest to you hide behind the longest knives. I believed them now. By late afternoon, I had everything printed. I walked into the kitchen, placed the folder neatly on the table, and stuck a bright yellow post-it on top. It read, "Next time, ask or don't touch." They saw it. They didn't move it, didn't mention it at dinner. But the message was there, sharp as a scream, quiet as a blade. That night, I stood at Lark's doorway. She was asleep, one hand tucked under her cheek, the other resting on the worn edge of her blanket, the same one she's had since she was 3. I watched her for a long while. Then I whispered, just loud enough for myself, "I won't let them write you out too." Thursday brought no change in the weather, but the house felt colder. I sat in the breakfast nook that morning, staring into a coffee I didn't want. The post-it from 2 days ago still sat untouched on the kitchen table, yellow, loud, unread. My father glanced at it once. That was it. They didn't respond, not with words, not with questions. They drank tea on the porch that afternoon, laughing with each other as if the air wasn't thick, as if the silence wasn't strategic, like their stillness meant they were above my indignation, or simply didn't believe I had it in me to act. I've come to understand something about people like them. They don't cut you open with shouting or slaps. They do it by pretending nothing happened, like it wasn't real unless they acknowledged it. "Are they gonna live here forever?" Lark asked me while coloring on the living room floor. I opened my mouth, closed it. There was a knock at the front door. I opened it to find Mr. Tanner Rusk. The man had lived across the street for years, but we'd never had more than a "how's it going" between us. He held a USB drive in his palm like it was too heavy. "I wasn't going to get involved," he said, voice shaking. "But I got a security cam out back facing the alley. It caught something. I think you ought to see." I thanked him. He didn't stay. Back in my office, I plugged it in. I didn't know what I expected, but what I saw made my hands go still on the desk. It was Lark, the day of the party. She was holding her little stuffed tiger, looking confused. Darla, the housekeeper, walked her across the yard, opened the shed, gestured for her to go in. Lark hesitated. Then a figure appeared. My mother. Velma stood at the edge of the patio, dressed in her white hosting sweater, holding a wine glass, mouthing something in Darla's direction. I rewound, played it again. She said, "Just put her in there. We'll deal with it later." No sound. But the lips were clear. Intent was clear. I sat back, breath stuck halfway in my chest. They meant to tuck her away, like a dish that didn't match the table. I closed the window, removed the drive, and walked to the staff quarters where Darla was folding napkins. She looked up and froze. "Darla," I said calmly, "I need you to tell me the truth." She started shaking. I thought it was just a timeout. I didn't know how cold it was going to get. Mrs. Godwin said she'd go check in. She told me to take her out there for a little while. I didn't raise my voice, but I did take a step closer. "You know what could have happened to my daughter?" Darla started crying. "She said not to say anything, said you were under a lot of stress, said it'd be best if you had space." I handed her the flash drive. "I don't know what she told you, but you should think about protecting yourself." She nodded, almost collapsed into herself. "Even accomplices get caught in the storm," I whispered. More to myself than to her. I walked back into the main hallway. Everything inside me felt sharp. But I didn't break. Instead, I moved methodically, made 2 copies of the footage, uploaded one to the cloud, filed it under a password only I knew. Then I sat down with a notebook and wrote it all out. Dates, amounts, conversations, word-for-word quotes. I called an old law school friend. She worked in family law now. Left a voicemail. "It's personal, and it's serious. I'm not being dramatic. I just need to know my rights." The light outside dimmed into evening. I didn't turn on the lamps. Instead, I opened my email, drafted a message to the HOA board. typed the subject line. Property rights and resident misrepresentation. I stared at it, finger hovering over send. Then I closed the laptop, not because I was backing down, but because I needed the silence to say what their smiles never would. The most dangerous thing I've ever done is finally see them clearly. Friday morning felt deliberate. I didn't stumble into it. I walked, awake before the alarm, showered before the house stirred. I dressed in jeans and a navy sweater, tied my hair back, and went straight to my office. I printed the footage, 2 copies, uploaded another to cloud storage, time-stamped, backed up twice. The file name was clear, truthoriginal.mp4. I moved through the house slowly, quietly. My parents were in the kitchen, Dad watering the plant near the window, Mom arranging cucumber slices and crackers onto a tray like she was prepping for a brunch magazine shoot. They didn't flinch when I passed by, didn't ask questions, just smiled that soft, dismissive smile that said, "We're still the center." Only people who believe they'll never be held accountable behave this calmly. At 11:42 a.m., I got the call. Someone from the HOA board, Susan, the one who wore heels to lawn inspections, left a voicemail and then followed up with an email. Dresden, I wanted you to know we received a formal complaint regarding emotional disturbances and community tension involving your household. The video submitted paints a concerning picture. Let's talk before this escalates. Attached to her message was a still frame from the footage. My daughter, standing alone. Near the shed. Only this time, the clip had been edited. It showed nothing of Velma, nothing of Darla, just Lark outside and me walking by, cropped and silent, a twisted version of truth. Velma had submitted it. I recognized her phrasing in the written complaint. Dresden appears overwhelmed. Our concern is for the child's well-being. Sometimes good people need help and don't know how to ask. Character assassination, wrapped in compassion. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. Then I stood up, slowly. By noon, I had scheduled an emergency meeting with the HOA liaison, forwarded the full video, uncut, unfiltered. Included the statement signed by Tanner Rusk and Darla. I printed the financial withdrawals, highlighted the transfers, screenshotted the moment my father approved the party payment, and then I went to the kitchen trash, dug out the blue ceramic mug Lark had painted last Christmas, best Nana ever, across the side in wobbly paint. It was cracked, not shattered, just split. I photographed it, framed it in the camera like evidence. They couldn't even keep what was freely given. By late afternoon, the table in the dining room was covered, not with food, but with receipts, evidence, paper clipped and labeled. My mother passed by once and glanced, didn't ask, didn't blink. Around 4:30, I called them in. No yelling, no theatrics. They sat across from me at the dining table, both sipping from their matching wine glasses. I laid everything down, one piece at a time, the video, the bank statements, the HOA complaint with their signature, and the mug. Velma's face didn't move. "You weren't ever meant to carry the family legacy, Dresden," she said calmly. "You were supposed to maintain it." Carvel added, "You always took things too personally." I didn't reply. Instead, I reached for the final paper, a written declaration. "Your lock access will be revoked by midnight. You are no longer listed on this home's security, utilities, or insurance. You will vacate this house within 72 hours. If not, I will pursue legal action." Still no shouting, just paperwork. As I walked out of the room, I passed the hallway. There was a new photo canvas hanging. The party, Leland centered, my mother beside him, guests clapping, laughing. I was cropped out entirely. I stopped, peeled it off the wall, walked it to the trash can in the garage, and dropped it face down. Then I stood there, quiet. "I was never in the picture," I said aloud, "because they never planned to keep me in the frame." Saturday morning, the moving truck pulled away without a sound. They didn't wave. They didn't look back. I didn't expect them to. Lark stood beside me barefoot, holding her tiger by the arm, watching like she was waiting for a goodbye that wouldn't come. Then she turned and ran back into the hallway, humming to herself, her feet slapping the wood floor, light and free. For the first time in weeks, no one told her to be quiet. I stood there a while longer, hands in the pockets of my robe, coffee cooling in my mug. This time, the silence didn't shrink me, it made room for me. That afternoon, I started reorganizing the kitchen, not out of need, just instinct, sorting through shelves, clearing drawers, and then, tucked behind a set of cracked ramekins, I found it. The mug, blue, ceramic, still stained faintly with the glitter paint Lark had used. Best Nana ever. It had a thin crack down the center now, not broken, just changed. I turned it over in my hand and remembered the day she gave it to Velma, the smile on her face, the way Velma said thank you like it was a formality. I set it on my own shelf, next to my coffee pot. No explanation, just action. They discarded it. I reclaimed it. That night, Lark cried out in her sleep again. I walked to her room before the second whimper came, expecting to find her tangled in covers, kicking like she had before. But she was already sitting up, arms wrapped around herself, eyes wide open. "I'm okay now," she whispered when she saw me. I sat beside her, wrapped my arms around her. "They can't lock you away again," she added. "No," I said. "They can't. Not ever." She laid her head against my chest, and I held her as the room went still. For the first time since all this began, I let the tears fall. Not for them, not for what I lost, but because I had made it through. The next morning, a message waited in my inbox. Whitney. She'd been at the party. Quiet, observant. Her email was short. "I should have spoken up. We all saw what they did. You weren't crazy. You were courageous." Attached was a screenshot, a now deleted post from Velma in some private neighborhood group. A photo of her in front of the house, arms crossed proudly, captioned, "Proud to have defended the Godwin name. Some people aren't built for legacy." I didn't reply, but I smiled. Sometimes validation comes after the verdict. By Sunday afternoon, I had cleared every piece of their legacy from the house, the porcelain tree, the canvas photos, the party tray labels. I replaced them with photos of me and Lark, Sunday picnics, bubble baths, our trip to Chattanooga. Nothing fancy, just real. I made her dinner, mac and cheese with extra cheese, juice boxes, and a bowl of strawberries. We ate on the floor of the living room, laughing at nothing and everything. Later that night, I sat at my desk, looked around at the quiet house, and wrote a note. I pinned it to the corkboard above my desk. "You don't need their permission to belong to yourself." They left. But the space they tried to erase, it's mine now. Every square inch.